All right. My name is Julie Pearson Little Thunder. Today is February 10th, 2013, and I'm at the Tulsa Indian Arts Festival with artist Skip Rowell, who's done this show for many years. Skip, you're of Choctaw descent. You've won a number of top awards at some of the top Southeastern shows. You've been named a Master Artist of the Five Tribes. You work in multiple media, but you're perhaps best known for your miniature scrimshaw work, usually focused on wildlife images. Thank you for taking the time to speak with me today.
Sure, you're quite welcome.
Where were you born and where did you grow up?
I was born in Durant, Oklahoma, and I spent most of my childhood in Atoka County around a little town called Stringtown, and then I graduated from high school in Atoka.
What did your folks do for a living?
My dad was a barber, and when he wasn't barber, he was fighting somewhere. And my grandma was a well-known bootlegger in the county, and but my mom, she kept everything together. She retired from the public service company.
Did you have is your Choctaw on your mom's side or your dad's side?
It's on my dad's.
Did you have a relationship with your grandparents on either side?
Yeah, I did. Like I say, my bootlegging grandmother was one side of my dad's family, and they were a little sketchy in places all through history, but on my mom's side, my grandfather there was a welder and a lay minister.
Uh-huh. So you got to be around both grandparents a little bit. Was anybody in your family or extended family artistically gifted?
No, not that I know of. I think there was talent there, but it was something back then that in our culture you just didn't do. I remember when I was a child, I'd hide behind the bed and draw pictures on cardboard boxes and stuff. My mom always tried to keep me in color books and stuff when I was little, but my dad thought being drawing and painting was a sissy at deal, and so at one point in my life I completely quit for about 15 years and never even did anything because I just got tired of being made fun of, and you're not manly, you got to do this, if you're not hunting or trying to kill something, why you're not on the main line. So it was one of the biggest influences I had though was my second grade teacher. She was an Indian lady named Vivaloo Thacker, and she took me to my first art competition in the second grade to Durant. I always remember that. I drew a chicken, and but she was encouraged me, and kind of fed what I was needing there. So that's basically how I got started.
That could make a huge difference. So the ages when you were really discouraged and you kind of put it aside were around 9 or 10?
Yeah, long in there, 12 to till I went to college, and I went to have a degree in commercial art and advertising from OSU Tech, and then I went from there to Dallas, Texas, and worked for Frontier Theaters Advertising. We were doing billboards for theaters and stuff.
Wow. I was going to ask you real quickly, did your grandma speak the language? Did you get to be around the Choctaw language at all?
No, not that I don't even remember. About all they did was just cuss in English.
That's a good language for that, isn't it? Did you have any other teachers, either at the secondary level or high school level, that encouraged your artistic talent?
No, when I was in high school, we didn't have an art class there at Atoka, but they was always coming after me to draw something for the
classmates,
yearbook or something, and different things like that.
Yeah. So when did you sell your first piece of art?
Oh gosh. I don't even really remember. I think it was probably after I came out of the Army.
Okay, not in high school.
No.
So in the Army, did you utilize your artistic skills at all?
Yeah, I wound up after they found out that I could do some of that stuff. I'd had to assigned to paint the company logos on different things, and on various occasions, I got a chance to use a little bit of it.
And you enlisted as opposed to.
Yeah, in the Army.
So you got a degree in commercial arts. What kind of a base do you think that provided for you that you draw upon today?
Well, to be honest with you, really very little. Of course, the type of stuff to do today really didn't have much to do with that. I did worked at Frontier Airlines for a while in a silk screen department and doing that stuff. But as far as the type of stuff I do now, it was really didn't carry over much.
Mm-hmm.
That was more commercial with silk screen work and that type of stuff.
Mm-hmm. But at some point, you did leave Texas, and I guess you were working in Dallas at that point. Was that a big change of environment for you?
Yeah, and that's an easy place to sin down there for a young man. but I worked there, and it was a good job. But after about 3 or 4 months of that, I'd catch myself. If I'd see somebody coming down the street in a horse trailer, I'd trot along, try to see who if I knew them and stuff, and it just wasn't for me being in an environment like that. I needed some woods and some open air,
And then when you came back to Oklahoma, at some point you went to work for a saddle maker and learned leather tooling?
I rodeoed for probably 35 years, and I got into, which that had an art background too, because of tooling and leathers with the scroll work and different things, and I made a lot of saddles, repaired a lot of them, and made a lot of leather goods of different kinds,
So were you kind of partially earning a living from rodeo and partly from saddle making?
I made some decent wages at it, and I always had an eye for a good horse. I bought and sold some good horses and over the years, and shipped a lot of them to California and different places. And it got to where when a lot of people I knew in different states needed the right kind of horse, they'd call me. I kept them, everything kind of rolling that way too,
Were you also kind of drawing on the side a little bit while you were rodeoing?
No, basically not. A lot of times if we was going on a long trip, I'd take me a piece of wood and sit back in the camper and carve out something, and everybody gripe because there's wood chips everywhere. But, that's something if it's, and I truly believe this, and when I go to an art class to talk to kids or young people, I'm a full believer that God gave every human that was ever born a talent of some kind, but it's in its infant form, and it's up to you to develop it. And so if that's in you, you're going to be. I've sat in the woods and carved things and stuff. It's there and it's going to come out. But it takes you to take it from the infant stage to polish it, perfect it, and get it to the point that you can. And one of the worst mistakes that I try to talk to young people about that have a lot of talent, it's real easy. Especially, and I've saw this happen, and I know Merlin has too, that you see a young person with a lot of talent, and they have some success, they sell a piece or two, and pretty soon they start making it to sell. And anytime you do that, you're going to lose it. You do each piece like you plan on keeping it yourself, that you'd be proud to hang it in your own house. Then if you sell it, you keep your quality and you keep your reaching for just a little bit more all the time. So I do sell a lot of my stuff, and in fact, I'm a full-time artist. That's the way I make a living, but I don't make it to sell.
That's a nice distinction. So you were already, I think it sounds like in your early 20s, kind of gravitating towards that three-dimensional work.
Yeah.
Did your leather tooling provide any kind of base for your eventual discovery of scrimshaw? How did you discover?
Yeah, that was something that always fascinated me. Of course, my culture, I love knives and different things, and I would see some scrimshaw on knife handles or pistol handles or something, and I never could figure out how they did it, and I finally found a book, and I don't remember who wrote it. If I did, I wouldn't tell you because it's the worst thing I ever got hold of. And so I took that thing. Well, it took me a year to work all that stuff out of me to get it. I looked at a couple of early pieces that I found in a drawer here about a year ago, and it looks like you cut them out with a hatchet. And so that was what I had got from that book. So I just kept working down until I developed my own tools, which basically is absolutely nothing but a sewing needle stuck in the end of a dowel rod. And that's what I do all my work with.
And you figured that out for
Yeah.
yourself, not from the scrimshaw book. Did the leather tooling help at all, though, do you think, with that fine?
Oh, yeah, I still incorporate some of it. In fact, I sold a piece yesterday. It was on a scrimshaw piece of fossil walrus ivory, a little necklace pendant, and I used the same old leather pattern that I used to use in the leather shop. Only difference was instead of putting acorns or something, I put little flowers and leaves and scrolled a couple of hummingbirds around it. And so, yeah, you still use some of that.
That's neat. So when did you first start entering shows, art shows, native art shows?
The first one I entered was a friend of mine there in McAllister named Christine Werner, who has studied art from every famous artist in the world, I guess, at one time or another. Heard that I was doing some scrimshaw stuff and came and bought a couple of knives off of it, and he encouraged me to enter a art show in Holdenville, a little small deal, and I did a couple of pastels, and I won my first place and with one and something with the other one, and so that kind of where I got started, and I was scared to death. I didn't want to take it because I thought then, and this is something else I share with young people, just because you enter a piece and you don't win with it, that doesn't mean your stuff's not any good. It's either one or two men's opinion, and I have judged some art shows, and I really have to discipline myself for not gravitating towards the things that I like personally, rather than maybe this over here with a little better quality. So that has absolutely nothing to do with your talent, whether you win first or second or don't at all, because the next place it all balances itself out, But anyway, that's where I started. That was the first one.
At Holdenville, yeah. So even though she had bought your scrimshaw and was interested in it, you entered pastels for that one. Were they wildlife images?
No, the one that I entered over there was a Plains Indian holding a spear and shield. And the reason I didn't take any scrimshaw is because she told me, she said, I'm not sure them people even know what that is. And I have had the strangest thing that happened to me, and I'm not going to tell you which art show it was. Don't want to offend anybody, but it was a well-known art show, still going on right now. I had a piece of scrimshaw over there, and I went to pick my stuff up, and I didn't win nothing, which is, that's okay. But that curator told me, said, this is the beatingest thing I ever saw. And he said, I don't know whether I ought to tell you this or not. He said, we had two judges. One of them wanted to give you first place. One of them said that wasn't real, that it was done with lasers. And he said they got in an argument and said what they decided to do was just not judge you at all. Because they didn't even, be honest with you, he said they didn't know what it was. And so I have run into that.
So probably in the early days, then you were sort of in the process of educating people about what scrimshaw was.
In this area now, it's well known on the coast in different places, but it's something was new for this area,
Mm-hmm. What kinds of materials did you start out using when you first started experimenting with scrimshaw?
Well, I have done it on just about anything you can scratch, but I first started out with, because I couldn't afford the real stuff and didn't know where to get it, fossil ivory. I really made it a point not to ever use modern elephant ivory. Just for the simple reason I love the old stuff better. It has better color to it and stuff, and I don't want to offend anybody, or I don't want to get any kind of ivory that came from black market stuff, so I just always refuse to use that. But when I started out, I bought some imitation ivory. It's called micarta. It's actually made from ivory dust and epoxy, and you buy it in sheets and cut it out, and you can do decent stuff, but nothing like the real thing, you know.
So, was your subject matter primarily wildlife in the early scrimshaw works?
Yeah, did a lot of wildlife, and I've always did some type of Indian stuff, maybe buffaloes, or an incorporated teepee and something, you know. But basically, a lot of it was just wildlife. Seemed like the market, I got started doing wildlife pieces. Well, somebody see that, said, well, do me a deer, or can you do this on that, you know. So there for a while I was pretty much just kind of looked like this was the way to go. So I did a lot of, and still do some wildlife, but basically now I do a lot of just basically 5 tribe stuff anymore, you know. I'm go back and take, I like to go back in the early stuff, is when the traders were coming over and trading blankets and different things, and the tribes were torn between the French, English colonies and all that, you know, and I'm trying to work in that area. I love the different types. One piece that I did I really liked, and I believe it may be archived in the Five Tribes Museum. I think Miss Griffin bought it, but it was an Indian standing, had a English trade musket, a French blanket, I think it was a French knife, and a Spanish, all these different things they were getting as trade goods, and standing there with the look and stuff that I captured in that was like, I don't know which side to join. You know, what do we do? Where do we go from here? We don't know. You know, we're caught in the middle of all this turmoil, and we'll never be the same. And I've got a piece that I'm working on now that I plan on putting in the master show, is a Spanish man standing there with all the old Spanish garb on, the armor and all that, standing talking to a Cherokee, and basically they're, before they ever got anything, you know, in the original dress and stuff, and a couple of more whispering over that we'll never be the same, you know, because here's a guy fixing to give us some blankets and the knives and all this stuff. So what we known all our lives is fixing to change, you know. So that the area that I'm really interested in trying to show right now.
That one piece sounds really wonderful too. What was one of your most exciting early awards?
Oh, I guess it would be winning the best of show at the competitive show there at the Five Tribes Museum. You know, that was the first time that I actually felt like maybe I do belong in this, you know.
Maybe this is what I need to do. And it was for a piece of scrimshaw work.
Yeah.
You also won second place in sculpture at Colorado Indian Market in 1985. Was that a bigger show than
it was a real big show, and I never saw so many people in my life. You know, it snowed that night that we got there about 2 feet, and I told my wife, I said, there won't be 10 people here. And so we go to the building. I walk in there, and I before the show opened, I walk the door and look, and there's people lined up as far as you can see, 4 abreast in the snow, waiting to get in there. And the piece that I was going to enter, I had came across a man found an old large whale's tooth at a flea market, and he brought it to me. And I particularly was going to do this piece for that show out there. And so I started out at the top of this, after I polished this tooth, and it's beautiful ivory, holds tremendous amount of detail, way better than elephant ivory or stuff, the mastodon. But I started out with an eagle at the top flying, and in the Rocky Mountains it came down and it had circled this tooth. It had some bighorn sheep, and then it came on down into elk, and then right down at the bottom it worked its way down to a beaver pond and stuff, and I had it on a base and had it on a base that turned where it slowly rotated. Well, I had told a doctor in Muskogee I was working on this. He said, I want to see it before you take it. So we stopped by on our way to Denver, and he was up in the operating room. He came down in his operating gear. I don't know what his patient was doing. Still had his mask on and all that. And I had it sitting on the hood. And it turned around. He said, what do you want for that? I said, well, I don't want to sell it right now because this is a piece that I'm taking out there to enter in that. And he said, well, what's first place out there? I said, it's $1,000. He said, what are you going to want for this piece? I said, of course, back then I was priced that cheaper than what the tooth's worth now. I said, I'll take $500 for the piece. He said, okay, so if I give you $1,500, I can have this now and you can play like you won. I said, oh, okay, So we make the deal, and I get out there, and I'm not going to enter anything. My wife said, yeah, you are. And I picked up a little old piece that wasn't 3 inches tall, and it was on a base. And she actually took it and put it in a sculpture. I said, you got to be nuts. They had bronzes out there and everything. And I ended up winning the cat. I was embarrassed, and people look at you funny, like, but, what do you do?
You found a category.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a great story. You did a lot of traveling to Texas early on. What was different from the Texas market what's different between the two markets, Texas and Oklahoma?
Well, to be honest with you, I'm an Okie through and through. The money's better in Texas. Money is even this year. I did a show there in I can't even think of the name of that town. Right, it's actually in Dallas. It's just they call it something else. And I had a show there in July, and when everything was pretty much, as well as I do, when the economy gets bad, art's the first thing that takes a hit. But that show was an outside show, which I very rarely ever do one of them. I don't like them, but I did this anyway, and I just sold nearly everything I had, So the economy was better there, and that's what made the difference,
Sometimes the business aspect of art is hard to master, and I'm wondering what some of your early lessons in that area were.
I have never been much of a businessman. My banker just laughs at me, and he says, he told, I don't know if this is true or not, I'm not a scientist, but he said, artists' brains are different than in other people. He said, you work off a creative deal. He said, mine is fine. He said, you let me handle your finances and you just do your artwork, So that's basically, I don't know, I just, one thing is I've never, and still I get griped at, I don't price my stuff high enough. To me, I don't know why anybody would want to give that kind of money for something like that I had fun doing, Now, if I was out there digging a post hole, it's different. But this, it doesn't come hard. There was times that you have to fight your way through different areas to get to a point. But now, I don't really have to wrestle with a piece. I can pretty much look at it for a while. I don't just grab a piece and go to work on it. I'll keep it laying around for a few days and let it tell me what it wants to be, and then just put it on there, So I don't, that was probably my biggest mistake, was not pricing my stuff for actually what it was worth or what it would bring,
So what role does Cleora play in the business?
Oh, she keeps my clothes done up, washes my socks, but she's been good to go with me as my helpmate, not just in life, but in my art business. She helps me cover stuff and make sure that the curtains are straight and the table's clean and all that, and it would be hard to do what I do without her,
Yeah. How would you, so you kind of got busier on the show scene in the 1980s, is that right?
Yeah, basically.
Um, what was one of your early galleries that you think was important to your career?
Well, I first stuff I put in the gallery was in Mrs. Verner's gallery there in McAllister, and some of the local clientele bought some pieces and stuff. And my career has never just taken a great leap from being here to there. It was a process, and I think most everybody's that way. You just have to. People that buy serious art, they want to know whether you're for real or not. Are you just going to be here and do this for a while and then going to be gone? And once you establish yourself, and they know that you're going to continue, you're going to be there, you're going to continue in your shows, that your bio is going to grow, and so people buy art because they like it. And I tell people, I've had people come and look at my stuff, and my opinion, I don't know if this is correct or not, but when you first see something, if it appeals to you right then, 90 times you'll be happy with it. If you have to talk yourself into buying something just because you want to spend some money and tell somebody what you gave for something, it's not going to be long. It's in the back room back there somewhere, So that has a lot to do with it, and I don't want to sell somebody something just because they want to spend some money. I want them to like this. I want them to enjoy it. And I was at this same show back when we had it at the fairgrounds, and I had a painting that I did of just maybe a 18 by 24, some smaller type painting of ending with a red blanket on. And this young couple kept coming by there about 4 or 5 times, and they would look at it, and I could hear them stepping over. They'd step over and talk. And one of them, I think the painting was like $750 or something. She said, they were arguing, well, we can't afford that. Oh, we want that, but can we not do that? And I was just getting pieces of this, and the show was about over, and they came back by and looked at it again, and I said, y'all really like that piece, don't you? I said, oh, yes, we love it. I said, we just cannot work that into our budget right now. They were probably in their early 20s. And I said, I'm going to tell you what I do. I said, if you'll pay me for what I got in that frame, I'm going to give you this picture. Just for the simple reason is because y'all love it, and I know you'll enjoy it, and I want you to have it. And they like to fell over, and I still get Christmas cards from them, And so and I've had people that's bought stuff that I knew. They just wanted to spend some money, and so I had rather, I have to sell this stuff, but I got more enjoyment out of giving them that piece than I did selling maybe some other pieces,
That's a great story. How do you think the native art scene changed from the 80s to the 90s? And maybe you haven't been in on the gallery scene enough to notice those changes, but maybe booth shows too from the 80s to the 90s. How did it change?
Well, it's like anything. It goes back again to how the economy's flowing. It has its ups, and then it'll have its lows, and it'll get back up again. And I still have maintained a pretty steady movement of my work through these periods. A lot of times I have developed a line of customers that pretty much I can do something and know, hey, he'll like this. Most of my stuff I sell over the telephone. I don't travel like I did because we adopted a little girl about 18 years ago, and she was just like 2 weeks old, and I didn't just want to leave this little orphan with somebody to take care of them while we travel. So I started cutting back on shows and just doing local stuff and trying to, there's more important things in life than making money, and so I cut back there. And then now that I have to brag on her a little bit. She scored a 33 on her ACT, and that wasn't good enough. She took it again yesterday and wants to get it up to a 34, and she plays softball. She's class president. She just does everything, But I think it's like anything in life. You have to what's the word?
Prioritize.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. But you have to put things in perspective, and as I continue to do my art, there are a lot of times I would depend on just calling the customer and say, I have this piece, I'll send you a photograph of it if you'd like, and so that's the way I go. And I do have done business with Eagle Tree Gallery down by Nashville in Jerry Ellis, and he's been a good outlet too, and I know that there's times if we go to a show and the crowds are not very good and the show's been a little weak, that I know times he's come over and bought things just on that account, so developing relationships like that with gallery owners and people, you put it all in a pot and stir it up and it keeps you going,
In 1990, the Indian Arts and Crafts Act was passed, and I wondered if you remember the impact that had kind of on the native art scene.
Oh, definitely. I think conception was a good thing. I know that, and I've been to shows to where people were selling China-made beads and Japanese stuff like that and pawning them off on people as Indian craft, and I think that definitely needed to have been stopped. I think that part was a good thing. I think it kind of got out of hand, I know as well as my family, and we researched it, and I have enough documentation that I could get a card right now, but I refuse to do it. And there's been shows that I've been kicked out of on that account, and people say, why don't you do it? It goes back, and like I say, we go back and traced it back to an Indian named Notosh Tubby, who was an interpreter on the Trail of Tears. I have copies of letters that my great-grandmother wrote so white men could come into her allotment and work on her farm, But they were not on the roll because they did not want their children sent off to some Indian school somewhere. And so that was a choice they made, and I just thought I would honor that. If they don't let me in a show, I'll just go to another one. And so it kind of got out of hand that way. I know up there at Lost City, there's some Cherokee people that can't even speak English that are not card holders. They have to bring somebody with them when they get ready to sell their stuff. And that's wrong, So it has its pros and cons, and it has definitely affected some shows, and some of them it hasn't. So, I just learned to go with. That's the thing about being in this long as I have. I can get into a show anywhere pretty much when I want to. I don't have to mail in photographs, and I can just send them a bio and go. So it's opened up for me, but it's took time. It's not nothing that just. And so I actually think the act was a good thing. It's like anything, though. If you're not careful, it gets out of control.
How did it feel to earn that title, Master Artist of the Five Tribes? What did that mean to you?
Oh, it was great. I had friends like Bill Rabbit and stuff. When I first got started, Bill and I got to be good friends, and several others, and something that I thought, well, I don't know if I'll ever make that or not, I have never been real high on myself as far as thinking that I'm it. I've always, a lot of times when I'd win something, I would actually feel self-conscious because I won. But anyway, it was a great thing, and it was a real boost to my business, because it gives you certain authenticity. And I have sold several pieces just because I had that plate on my desk or on my table that I am a master artist of 5 civilized tribes. So it gives you some credibility, because most people know that you don't get that unless you earn it, And it took several years of just continuing with the shows and different things and winning, and so that's it was a tremendous boost, and I'm proud of it.
Yeah. What's the most memorable comment or piece of feedback you got from a collector?
I'm sorry, I didn't really get all the question.
What's the most memorable feedback you've gotten
Oh.
from a collector or comment?
Well, I guess the funniest thing is, and I had a guy gave me a moose antler one time, and I threw that thing around on my porch at the shop and kicked it out of the way 2 or 3 times. Like, what am I going to do with this? One day I got the idea to carve it, so I set it up and I carved it, eagle in it, put it on a base, everything, and I've done. In fact, I always have some there. It's one of my better selling items, and we were at.
You mean moose antlers now?
Yeah.
Yes.
And we were at a show, I want to say it was in Arlington, Texas. And this man came up with some friends that he was visiting. He was from Norway. He didn't speak any English. But he fell in love with this eagle carving and he bought it. And we got a phone call from the friends that lived in Dallas and told me, said he would not let them ship that. Said he carried that back to Norway in his lap on the airplane and said he wouldn't allow anybody to touch it. And then about a week later, I get this letter from Norway, wrote in Norwegian, and I still don't to this day know what it says. So I don't know what happened, but I thought that's pretty neat that this guy liked that enough that he wouldn't even allow him to mail it, that he's going to carry it in his lap, And but here I've still got this Norwegian letter, and I don't know if it's good or bad, but I'm hanging on to it.
Till you find a translator.
Yeah.
All right. We're good. We're going to shift into your philosophies and practices a little bit. A little bit more technical discussion, but not super technical for scrimshaw work is very miniature, and it's working in a different scale. What helped you the most kind of get a hold of that scale?
Well, some of my stuff, actually, some of the things I do now are considered large for scrimshaw, because I do some pieces that are maybe 2.5, 3 inches by 4 or 5 inches, and I put them in shadow boxes and stuff. But it basically, considering it against painting and stuff, yes, it is tedious, small work, and I don't really know how to explain that question, except that you just, a lot of times I may have to draw something 2 or 3 times because I get it too. And here's the thing about the difference of scrimshaw than say painting. Basically, painting, you got a canvas or you got a piece of paper, whatever. They're all the same. And that's what I love about doing this scrimshaw work. It's always challenging. It always keeps you on your toes. You don't get complacent with it because every piece, and basically what I use now mostly is old woolly mammoth fossilized ivory. They're coming out with a lot of it now since the ice is melting up there, and they're getting some good pieces out of Siberia, and has tremendous color to it. But you may start up here working on the top of it, and it'd be firmer. Further you go, it starts softening up. So you have to just live with it, and baby it along and pull out what's in there. And it all has different shapes, different colorations, and so I just love it. And the fact that and I still do occasionally, get some Eskimo artifacts, Inuit artifacts. They didn't have the stone that we do here in this country, so a lot of their stuff was made out of fossil walrus tusk and ivory, spearheads and harpoon heads and sled runners and stuff. And I did in fact, I sold a man a collection of almost 300 pieces to one man that I had bought back from a collector of mine who passed away. And there's some tremendous fishing weights and different artifacts in there that are just really hard to get now, and working on those in the studio, and you're in there by yourself, and your mind goes to drift. I'm working on something here that a man 7,000 or 8,000 years ago used to feed his family, used to survive. He whittled this fishing weight hacked it out of a piece of walrus tusk, and put it on his net or put it on his sled and lived in a harsh environment, and it almost is kind of a eerie feeling sometimes to realize this mastodon elephant roamed this country 75,000 years ago, and here I've got a piece of it in my studio, and so I love doing that stuff. It's a lot more than just painting on the canvas.
Mm-hmm. The fossilized mastodon do you order that online or do you buy from dealers?
Well,
do you go in person?
I just bought 2 pieces here this morning from a friend of mine who got it from a friend of hers in Arkansas, mm-hmm. that got it from somewhere else, So, but I do buy a lot of it, and used to you could go. I haven't, but it would have been legal for me to go up to Alaska and go to the villages and buy this stuff. But when they were putting the Alaska pipeline in, and I had a lot of friends that went to work up there, and a lot of it, and it's the Eskimos have pretty severe alcohol problem, and one reason is that they're so isolated with nothing to do, especially the young people in these out villages. Well, these people that were up there wound up, they would trade liquor and stuff for huge pieces of mastodon ivory worth thousands of dollars, and so it was getting out of there. So the government came in, which it was really a great thing, and now it's legal to sell it they can sell it to an authorized dealer that they get a fair price for it, because that's the way they supplement their income. They pick up a lot of this stuff around the same old camps and villages that they traveled thousands of years ago. For goose season, they go to goose camp. Well, they camp there and then they find artifacts, and it keeps turning up. Well, instead of people just going up there and beating them out of it, they get a fair price to supplement them, helps them, and so I buy it, most of mine, through a dealer like that.
Mm-hmm. Do you when you're working on wildlife images, do you take photographs or do you work from scrap, other photographs, or how do you? A lot
of times I do now, and a lot of times I use photographs that are in maybe books or something, especially I don't do much research on the native animals because I've spent my life in the woods and I pretty much can know but still you need to look at a picture sometimes just to make sure that the feet are right or whatever. But if somebody wants me to do an African lion, I've got to go find somebody that took a photograph of an African lion, So, and I have a file of books that different National Geographics or different things, and I don't per se copy the pictures, but I use that as a reference to make sure that everything's correct. And I think that's important too, that especially doing our Native American stuff. And one of my pet peeves was, I guess I can't use names that I'd like to, famous Western artists who traveled from back east in a train, went through and made sketches, went back east and painted, did sculptures. I've looked at them, and I've been a cowboy all my life, and one of them, a famous sculpture of a cowboy, the saddle doesn't have a blanket under it. No cowboy would ride his horse without a blanket under it. One of them, the bits turned backwards. But another man who is a famous Western artist who lived the cowboy life, did a lot of his work around a campfire, all his stuff is correct, so you owe it to Seth. If you're doing Native American stuff, you need to know that tribe. You need to know what their dress was, what their customs was, what the tattoos looked like. A lot of people don't realize that a lot of our early native tribes, the woodland tribes, were tattooed, And so if you're going to do a piece and sell it to somebody, then it needs to be as correct as you possibly can make everything on it,
When you're when you've done a little preliminary sketching for a scrimshaw or whatever, do you do it on tracing paper or?
No, a lot of times I just generally do it on my piece.
Mm-hmm.
You know, once you get it polished out,
Directly on there.
and I just draw it directly on there. A lot of times sometimes I will, if I'm laying out a couple different things, I may scratch out some little primitive, just layout type thing to see if this buffalo head's going to fit behind this Indian, or I want to put a turtle in, or a dragonfly, or whatever, you know. That's the thing about doing a scrimshaw. If you're working on paper canvas and you're making your sketches, you can erase it. When you're doing it on this ivory, once you scratch it, you've got one choice: right. Either make that work or sand it off and start all over again. You know.
Right. Do you work on any other materials that you carve regularly besides bone or fossilized?
Yeah, I've done some
antler.
I've done some bronzes. I've done about 4 bronzes, and
what was that experience like?
It was pretty cool. You know, it's expensive, but I really enjoyed the process. You know, the friends of mine who run the foundry, the Bronze Horse.
Where is that?
In Pawhuska.
In Pawhuska.
Yeah. And they are real flexible to work with, you know, and so that process was pretty neat, you know, and I've done scrimshaw on jade. I've done it on. You can basically do this on anything. You can sand smooth and scratch, and it's got quite a history. A lot of explorers, the mountain men and stuff who opened up the West. A lot of them didn't have pencil and paper, but nearly all of them carried white powder horns. And they would take a knife point and make maps. And you can see, I've saw some of these in museums that they made maps to where the passes were through the mountains and different things. And I was doing some research one time and for a Bible class that I was going to teach. And I was looking through a Bible book that I had, and something caught my eye, and I looked, and there's this elephant tusk scrimshaw in there that came out of a tomb in Egypt, and what was depicted on it was the scrimshaw of the exodus of the children of Israel. And so this goes back, and it actually goes back to a caveman taking a stone and scratching into a bone and then rubbing some ashes in it. So it's got a rich history to it, you know.
Do you always have stories for your work? How important is story?
Oh, people like to hear stories, you know, and I try to be as factual as I can up to a point. No, but like that Western poet that says, "I'm going to tell you facts as long as I can, but I'm not going to quit talking." But no, I do. People like to know why you did this, what's the story behind it, and you know, and it's like a lot of people that see Indian art, and I did some paintings here. Last year I read the history of Old Fort Sill about the Indian wars and stuff, you know, and growing up I knew I always had some Indian heritage, and I wanted to be mighty elk or tall bull or something like that, and I come to find out I go back to an Indian named Notosh Tubby, which means slow walking turtle. You know, I mean, well, you go from there, you know. But anyway, a lot of people, I did these horses, 2 different large paintings of cavalry, one cavalry horse and an Indian horse, running loose after the battle, you know. And with one of them cavalry horse stepped on his bridle and broke a rein, and so the Indian horse I paint with the symbols, and a lot of people don't have a clue. They think that's just pretty decorations that they put. And I said, no. This handprint means that he killed an enemy in battle. I said, these horse tracks means he's had successful horse stealing raids. I said, these eye marks are clan marks, and they're fascinated to know that those actually meant things. So you people want to hear what's the basic behind what you're doing, you know.
Do you title all of your things? Or?
Oh yeah, I always try to, you know.
Even the little scrimshaw?
Well, the small jewelry pieces and stuff I don't, but I had a piece of bark mammoth ivory that I'd cut off. It had some bad cracks in it. I thought I can never use that, so I sawed it off, and I had it laying around. I started throwing it away, and I got thinking, I could seal them cracks up, and this a neat looking piece had beautiful color to it. And the way it come out, the top had actually been broken off, and it looked just like a rocky mountain there. And I've got it up there. It's maybe 3 inches by 4.5 or something like that. And I thought, so I did this old mountain man on it. And I put a little kind of grin on his face, not mean and gruff like a lot of them are, a little sneaky kind of grin on this old man. Well, I thought, I got a title list on the way to town. I was trying to hurry up and get it up here so I could have it for this weekend. So I'm thinking on the way to town, what am I going to call this? And so I made up this little poem on the way to town, and let me see if I can remember it. I said, I fought the Blackfeet, and let's see, I've trapped the beaver and kissed the bear. I fought the Blackfeet and still got my hair. I live up here till kingdom come, for I am a mountain man by gum. So that's I had that all and put on this little piece, And so, you got to have some humor in what you do, And this little guy looked just like he would tell you a line in New York Minute,
I hope we get to see that at the end. We're getting to the close here. How did you come up with your signature? Was there an art to that?
Well, early I tried different things, fancy stuff and stuff now, and now I just write my name, and I always, even if it's on a bigger painting or a little small piece, I try to keep my signature pretty minimal. Mm-hmm. I don't like great big, look at me, look at my name, don't worry about what you're buying here, I'm pretty self-conscious. You just put your name on there, and if they look, they do realize it's done by somebody, So mine is pretty simple. I started out and I have a feather with some of my early stuff and this and that, and I said, crap, I just write my name on it. Go on,
What's your creative process from the time you get an idea?
Sometimes it's pretty slow. But no, I know that this happens to other artists, or a matter of maybe mechanics or whatever your gift is. It's only like me. Art has always come fairly easy to me, but when it comes to being a mechanic or carpentering, all I've ever done with a hammer or a wrench is mash my fingers. I can't fix nothing. My wife will not let me touch anything around the house. She hires it done. But the process of, I've got ideas. I wake up with ideas for a piece that I never thought of the night before I went to sleep. But when I wake up, I'm going to go do that. I'm going to get up. I've got up in the night and make quick notes and something, that these come to you. And I think the Lord helps you with that stuff. I'm sure a lot of people that are working on an engine and run into a problem, it comes to them the same way. That's a gift that's been given you. And so it's hard for me to explain other than it just happens,
Do you have a creative routine? Do you work a certain number of hours?
Oh, no. The crappie's biting. Fish are biting, or the squirrels are cutting hickory nuts. I'm out of there, man. That's one of the things that is beautiful about being self-employed or in my stuff. In the same time I'm off out there, if I'm up the river in my boat, I just feel at ease with nature, and I learn a lot from it. I see things. I see the bark on a tree, and I thought, I'll remember that because I'll use that. Maybe a tree that's rotten and the limbs broke, or a bird, or whatever. It's all staying in the rhythm of life, and it's I think it's a big part of being an artist. I could not be an artist if I had to get up and work 8 hours a day in a studio, So I may be sitting there watching my cork go under, but I may want to paint that crappie with a picture of it when it comes up, So it's all part of it.
So looking back on your career so far, what's been one of the high points?
Yeah, well, I guess one of the highest points was becoming a master of the five tribes. And I've had several. It's always good when you sell high dollar stuff. And that's always a high point. But you know, I enjoy winning. I don't. I'm not always hung up on the ribbons. In fact, I got so tired of dusting that crap about a year ago, I just threw them all in a garbage bag. But it's part of the business because most of the time there's pretty good compensation comes with winning, and it's like found money. It's part of the business. So, in as long as you're winning awards, you know that you are keeping the quality of your stuff up. You're not getting slack and lazy and slanging it out there, So all of these things are part of it. I wouldn't say it's a real high point or whatever, but that's really a hard question for me to answer. It's all a high point for me.
Right.
I love it,
What's been one of the low points for you in this career so far?
Yeah, I don't know if I've had any. I mean, there's times that things get slow, when people get scared of spending any money, things will get tight. But that's the beauty part of being in this business for a while. Even in hard times or when it's slow, you still can sell pieces, because you've got collectors that buy them. And I've got a jeweler at home right now, and he just saw some of my work about a year ago, and he wants me to bring everything I do by and let him see it, and he wants to buy it. He'll buy that Mountain Man. He said, I want to buy that, but you go ahead and take it to the show if you don't want to sell it. He said, I'm going to build me a collection. I said, I'm going to collect your money, so we're going to both be happy.
Well, is there anything we forgot to talk about before we take a look at your artwork?
I sure hope not.
All right, great.
I'm not a good interview. I don't know much about this kind of stuff, so you may have to edit about half of what I told you. I don't know.
I don't think so. We're going to focus the camera and take a look at your work. Okay, so we're looking at this Mountain Man piece that you were telling us the poem of. You want to?
Yeah, that's the one I was telling you about a while ago. And if you look at that old, this is called bark ivory. It's actually the piece that's on the outside that takes all the weathering, and it gives it looks just like a tree bark. If you was to see that before it's polished out, you wouldn't even pick it up. But anyway, you just a little bit of sand in the stuff, but you can see the big cracks that in that stuff, which is a characteristic of ivory. All of it has some hair cracks of some kind in it, but you learn how to either incorporate them in what you're doing or work over and around them. But that was a fun piece to do,
It's got gorgeous colors. I'm just going to try to get it at a slightly different angle too. It's beautiful. All right, and how about the knife? Oh yeah, and even the shape of the wood piece behind it is imitating that of the knife handle. You want to talk about this piece?
Yeah, this piece is done on actually it's a warthog tush that comes out of Africa. Buy them through dealers, and they're just terrible looking when you get them. And the actually as much work as getting them sanded down past the enamel and polished. And once you get into that, it's a beautiful high grade of ivory. It holds tremendous detail. But with these I've incorporated the carving on the end of the eagle head, plus the added of the scrimshaw on the knife, and actually I even acid etched the blades with eagles and different things in there. So I've really had a lot of success with these. They're pretty collectible, and they've been a good piece for me.
And you added the turquoise too. Huh?
Yeah, a lot of times I'll use turquoise or jasper or maybe black buffalo horn, and it just all of that combined, it just makes it work,
Beautiful. Go ahead.
The scrimshaw piece we looked at, or I certainly don't think I've arrived. I'm still trying new things, still developing. It took me about a year to learn how to color this stuff, and I put some subtle color in it. You can't just use paint or you can't use dye, and it's a process that a lot of people now that try to pick my brain and just want me to, how do you do that? I want to do, I'll be glad to help anybody teach. I'm fixing to maybe start this summer, start having some classes and passing some of the things that I've learned on, because I know I'm not going to be able to do this from now. The little tiny stuff, I'm nearly 70 years old, so it's getting hard for me to see. And so these are things that I'm going to share with other people and try to keep it going on. And
That's great. How about this piece? This is just gorgeous.
yeah, this is one of the antler carvings that I were talking about earlier. This particular one is carved from moose antler. And basically, moose carve better than anything because they're one of the few antlers that's pretty solid all the way through them. They're not like a deer horn or an elk that have that honeycomb inside of them. And they make beautiful carvings. They're a little bit tricky because this one is actually thicker than some, and it's the thickest part's not over about 3/4 of an inch. So you have to learn how to get some three-dimensional work in such a thin area. So you learn how to carve stuff back and set stuff forward, and it makes it look alive instead of just a dead piece,
Yeah, with the fish and everything. It's just gorgeous. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Skip.
Okay, are we done?